wrote one too, but. So did you guys eat dinner?
Yes.
Was it good?
I liked it. I liked it. Yeah, she didn't like it.
What did you have, like?
I had the grouper with the prawns and the clams stewed all together. Yeah, she doesn't like that.
Oh, you have the same.
It's a magic place in the past. Actually, it was called Promontorio Sacrum, holy place in the past by the primitive tribes who lived there. Then we go to the nearby town of Sagres. We drive through Sagres. Then before that we make a comfort stop, definitely. Then from there we drive till the past. Important for many reasons. As a matter of fact, when we come down here to the Algarve, we have to talk about one man and one man only. And that man is Prince Henry the Navigator. This is the man who started our expansion overseas, the man who prepared our sea adventure, the man who built the ships we needed, the right shape of ships we needed to sail all over, the man who had all the maps actually made with freshwater points, food supplying, actually all those things on the maps, the winds where they were blowing from. Actually, this is the man that is responsible for this phase of our history. And this man, Henry the Navigator, we're going to talk about him almost in every town we stop, because he was a very important personage of the country in the time of the second dynasty. We're talking about the second dynasty of kings. So, to give you a bird's eye view, very soft about the history of Portugal, you know, let me tell you this because I'm very good putting people asleep. When I usually talk about the history of Portugal 10 minutes after, 50% of you really fall asleep. So I want to tell you this, actually it's a secret. If at night you have problems about falling asleep, give me a phone call. I'll go to your bedside, actually I'll let you know a little about the history of Portugal. 5 minutes later you fall asleep, no problem at all. So don't hesitate, just let me know about it. But I find it important indeed actually to know a little about the history of this country, because in every country where we go, I believe it's good to know how come that there is a country in that place, and how come that we have a country in this part of Europe, and that country is called Portugal. It's interesting to know. But we can say that everything starts about 35,000 before Christ. We have tribes coming from North Africa, and you know what? They did it the hard way. Instead of crossing the Mediterranean, no, they came North Africa, Middle East, then they went Northern Europe, Central Europe, until they landed right here. And when they landed here, they couldn't go any further. They had the sea in front of them. They didn't know how to navigate at the time. And so these tribes, they are either warriors, living in the mountains, or then fishermen, settling down on the coast. Two types of people. These people, the most important of them who settled here were called Lusitanians. And that, as I explained, marks the difference between nowadays Spaniards and Portuguese people. And these people, they had a very slow evolution until the moment that they became farmers. The people of the mountains, the warriors, they became mainly farmers. And once they became farmers, they become recollectors. They start having crops. And once they have crops, they have something to trade with other people. That is a time for tradesmen of other countries to come and settle trading colonies along the coast. The very first to come were the Phoenicians, close to 1000 before Christ. After them came the Greeks, in about 600 before Christ as well. And then the Carthaginians, close to 500 BC. After them the Romans arrived in about 260 before CE. But the Romans are no tradesmen, no businessmen. They are conquerors. The little town of Rome actually became an empire, conquering all the lands around the Mediterranean Sea, North Africa, the area of Israel nowadays, or that area, then the southern Europe as well, and they are even in the British Islands, and here, when they land, they want to conquer. So that starts automatically a war. between the natives and the Romans that is going to last until 46 before Christ. 46 before Christ, there is a peace treaty between both sides, and Portugal, I mean this piece of land, starts being Romanized, which means starts assimilating the Roman culture. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean that the language we speak nowadays, for instance, it's an heritage from those days. The way we built, look at the roofs on the left, those houses. That's what we call Roman tile. Is even nowadays, 2,200 years after, later, the kind of tile we use for our houses as well. Our legislation in the past, until 1976, basically 77, the time for the great changes they made in education in this country. But actually, until 1976, every attorney in law had to be fluent in Latin. You had to speak Latin. And why? Because our legal system, our legislation, is based in the old Roman codex, Roman legislation. And for that reason, they should be able to understand the base of the legislation they're going to use in their jobs. And so, basically, it was mandatory for them to learn Latin as well. The patios, the yards we have in our houses, based in the old Roman yards as well. Actually, all these things are a lot of things that we inherit from the Romans, the way we cultivate our fields, all those things dating back from the Roman times. But the Romans, in a certain moment, became a kind of an elephant with clay feet. And those feet started breaking, collapsing the elephant, which means the empire was so big, so hard to defend. The defense was given to mercenaries that were paid by the Romans, that they didn't care anymore, just putting all their blood, all their sweat in the defense of the empire. And so the barbarians start step by step destroying the Roman Empire. By the way, do you know why we call them barbarians? Very simple. Barbarians are tribes from Northern Europe. And these people were called barbarians because, according to the Romans, they were not as developed as the Romans. Paragraph. That's the only reason why they were barbarians. But they had their own culture, civilization, so they were a race. And obviously that when the barbarians come over here, we talk about the Visigoths. The Visigoths are those that in the late 4th century are going to destroy the Roman Empire. They are going to embrace the Christian religion, and they are going to build an empire that included nowadays lands of Portugal, Spain, southern part of France. This was the Visigothic Empire. Huge piece of land over here. Ruled from Toledo, not Toledo. We say Toledo in Spain. Have you heard about this city? Toledo, why don't we say Toledo? Because Toledo is in Ohio. Why Toledo is in Spain? Because the E in Spain, we say Toledo, right? Therefore, actually, that was the capital city, religious and political capital city of all this territory over here. But what happens is, while all these things are happening over here, in the other side of the world, nowadays Middle East, there is a man called Muhammad who claims to be the last prophet of the only God. He receives all those messages from God. This man starts the Islamic religion. Actually, the Islamic religion is later on brought to North Africa. That is going to be Islamized by the Sunni, and when the whole North Africa is already Islamic, with Muslims, basically Muslims, it happens that one of these men, a strong leader with a huge army, decides to expand the religion to Europe. And so he crossed the Strait of Gibraltar and he lands in the Rock of Gibraltar with an army in 711. You heard the word Gibraltar before, didn't you? Yes. Have you been there? Yeah. No? You did? Gibraltar is just a rock. The reason why? There is an insurance company that used to say it was Gibraltar, the name of the insurance company, solid as a rock. Yeah. Right? The name of the company, or the logo, the motto of the company. And the name of the rock, Gibraltar, comes from that man, Tarek. Actually, when he landed there, the rock became known as Jebel el Tarek. Jebel el Tarek, Gibraltar, present name of the rock. And that man, in 711, launched an attack against the Christians, and 10,000 Christians are defeated, and they step by step occupy the Iberian Peninsula. Actually, they occupy mainly the center and the southern part. Northern part, they were never able to get there, because very easily the Christians reorganized themselves, and helped by French noblemen coming over here to fight the Moors with their own personal armies. They start getting rid of the Moors. But the point is that something that took the Moors 5 years to conquer, took the Christians 800 years to get back. Because the last city that is going to be conquered after the Muslim reconquest is going to be the city of Granada in Spain. So 1492. So from 711 till 1492, it's about 800 years of Muslim occupation on the Iberian Peninsula. Here in Portugal, much less, because the southern part where we are now, this Algarve, was a Muslim kingdom, the last Muslim kingdom, and this was conquered in 1249. But actually, the beginning of the reconquest of this territory, two French noblemen came to help the King of Castile, fighting the Moors, and they are rewarded with lands. There was obviously the price given to them. Huge lands, they were made kings of those lands and marrying the daughters of the king as well. And that happened precisely with Henry of Burgundy. Henry of Burgundy is going to marry to the daughter of Alphonse of Castile, and he was given the territory of Portygal. Portygal was a small territory in nowadays northern part of the country, and his son Alphonse Henry decides after the death of his father that instead of giving this land back to his grandfather as he should have done once his father died, he decides to become king of Portugal. His mother is against, which means the king's daughter, the wife of the late Henry of Burgundy, is against that, and she says, no, no, we have to give the land back to your grandfather. He says, no, no, I'm going to be king of this country. And so he fights the mother in a battle, puts the mother in jail, and proclaims himself king of Portugal. And he starts the independence and the history of this country. 1140, we became an independent nation under the ruling of Alphonse I. The first dynasty of Portugal is the House of Burgundy. So in our history of the monarchy, we have 4 dynasties. The first one is the dynasty of Burgundy. The second, the dynasty of Avis. The third is the Habsburg dynasty. The fourth and last is the dynasty of Braganza. So the first dynasty, the main goal of these people is to conquer all the land. And so they shape the country. They give the country the shape it has nowadays. All this land is conquered, and the last piece, the southern part, in 1249. So 1249, Portugal got the borders that we have nowadays. Amazing. Some of the oldest borders in Europe, never changed until this moment. And you know what? Lisbon became the capital of Portugal in the 13th century as well. Capital of the country for more than 700 years. Really amazing. One of the oldest capital cities in Europe. Now, the first dynasty ends with the death of King Ferdinand, who had one daughter, and that daughter was married to the King of Castile. But when the king dies, the daughter was supposed to be the Queen of Portugal. What happens? By the way, let me show you the river Arade. This is the same river that we saw yesterday in the town. We went for dinner, and it drops on the left on the Atlantic coast, where there is the town of Portimão. Portimão is an old fishing center, was in the past the most important fishing town of this whole coast of Algarve. So I was telling you that the death of King Ferdinand makes that his daughter is supposed to be Queen of Portugal, but she's married to the King of Castile. And if she becomes Queen of Portugal, we are going to lose our independence. They're going to put us together with Castile, and there will be Castile ruling over Portugal. We don't want that to happen. And so our parliament gets together and is going to appoint the son of another king, John, King of Portugal. And he becomes John I of Portugal. As a matter of fact, he was master of a military order. He had thousands of men under his command. And so he's going to be the man who is going to fight the Castilian invasion that happened in 1385. In a big battle, the Battle of Aljubarrota, he defends Portugal, defeats the Castilian army, and starts our second dynasty, the House of Avis. On the other hand as well, he's going to marry to Philippa of Lancaster, the granddaughter of Edward III of England, the daughter of John of Gaunt, and he's going to start our second dynasty, and one of his sons is going to be Henry the Navigator. Prince Henry was the third son of this family, and he was a dreamer, a man that used to sit on the shores watching the waves and wondering what might exist behind the waves. And this man and his dream actually to discover all those lands led him just to start exploring, sending small ships along the African coast, drawing precisely the maps of all that coast in detail, and suddenly he becomes great master of the Order of Christ. Actually, it's an important military order with a lot of men and money, and so he's going to have the money and the man he needs just to fulfill his dream. With all these men, he's going to having new ships built, he's going to send a lot of expeditions, and thanks to him, Portugal discovers a lot of lands all over the world and builds a large, huge empire, including the lands of, first of all, continental islands, Madeira and Azores. Then in North Africa, we conquer the territories we need to protect our navigation from the attacks of the Muslims. We conquered Ceuta, Melilla, Tangier, Essaouira, Casablanca. All those were Portuguese towns. Then we keep going down the African coast. Angola, Mozambique, Guinea, Green Cape Island. Then finally we are able to cross the Cape of the Storms, later on called the Cape of Good Hope. And once we cross it and we pass from the Atlantic to the Indic, we found a way to India. And Vasco da Gama arrives to India. Goa, Damão, Diu, Bombay. Later on, Malacca as well. Then we arrive at Timor, and we get Timor. And finally, Pedro Álvares Cabral discovers Brazil in 1500. So actually all this was our Portuguese empire. Not to mention as well that we arrive in China and the Chinese give us a little island, a little territory, not island but a territory, on the mouth of the Pearl River, just to start trading between China and Europe. Macau was Portuguese until 1999. So this was our empire all over the world. A lot of land, very few people. At the time, Portugal had a population of about 3 million people, 3.5 million people. So we start developing the trade, but what happens? Well, the King Sebastian, one of the last kings of our second dynasty, dies very young in a battle in North Africa. He was not married, he had no children, and so when he dies, his uncle takes the crown, but his uncle is a cardinal of the church, 78 years old, so there's nothing he can do. And so 2 years later he dies, leaving no descendants of course, and we have no king. In Spain, the country is ruled by Philip of Habsburg. Philip II of Spain is the king of Spain. That Philip II is the son of Charles I, and his mother is a Portuguese princess. And so once he is son of a Portuguese princess, he has the right of heritage of the crown of Portugal. And so he puts an army together, he invades Portugal and he picks the crown of Portugal as well. And here we start our third dynasty together with Spain. So we're going to be put together with Spain and we are going to be ruled by the Habsburg family. So that's our third dynasty that lasts for 60 years. After 60 years of being ruled by the Habsburg, we are tired of Spain. Because, for many reasons, we lost part of our colonies all over. We created enemies that before were allied to us. Once we are part of Spain, the enemies of Spain became enemies of Portugal as well. And we have to pay more and more taxes. We had to fight side by side with Spain against people that were allied with Portugal. And we lost most of our fleet in the invincible Armada that was put by the Habsburg against the Tudors in England. So all that makes that we decide to make a kind of revolution over here. We kill the representative of the King of Spain and we start our fourth and last dynasty, the House of Braganza. The House of Braganza indeed starts our last dynasty that lasts until 1910, and during this period of time we are going to regain independence, recover all the lands we had lost for the Dutch and for the Germans, which were enemies of Spain. We are going to start developing the trade between India and Portugal, Brazil and Portugal, making of Lisbon the most important trade and commercial harbor of Europe. But when we are in the peak of our development, one earthquake puts down all these things. The earthquake of 1755 that destroyed 1/3 of Lisbon, destroyed hundreds of cities all over the country, destroyed in Spain, Cadiz, Huelva, all that coast around on the transition from the Atlantic to the Mediterranean. In North Africa, Rabat, Tangier were most affected by the earthquake as well. Italy as well, affected by the earthquake. But actually here it was dramatic because 1/3 of the city disappears, people dies, more than 10,000 people dies in that earthquake, and so we have to rebuild the city and the country. The Marquis of Pombal, that man, whose statue was next to our hotel in Lisbon, is the one who starts the reconstruction of Lisbon. He's a man of a very strong character. He knows exactly what to do, and he did it very well. But he had no time to finish, because we are going to be invaded by Napoleon. Beginning of the 19th century, Napoleon invades Portugal for 3 times. Our royal family runs from Portugal to Brazil to not be put in jail, and when they come back to Portugal, the Brazilians, they don't want. The Brazilians say that it's absolutely silly to have a little tiny country ruling a territory that is 100 times bigger than Portugal. So they want the capital city to be in Brazil. Well, the king, to keep them happy, leaves the eldest son, Peter, as regent, representative of the king in Brazil. He comes back to Portugal, and when he arrives here, he finds the country totally destroyed by the war. The French, what they couldn't steal, what they couldn't destroy, they burned. And so the country was absolutely destroyed. No crops, houses destroyed, monuments, important buildings destroyed. So actually, he had to rebuild the country. He puts taxes on the colonies to get money from the colonies. And when his son Peter receives the letter of his father in Brazil, saying that Brazil had to pay more taxes just in order to help the reconstruction of the country, he opposes, and he decides to declare the independence of Brazil. And so Brazil becomes the first independent country out of our empire in 1822. So that was a great loss for us, but the reconstruction goes on. So the French, when they invaded Portugal, they not only destroyed, but they left the ideas of a republic, which was a system in France. And so these ideas left by the French gave a new political party, the Republican Party, that grows bigger and bigger all over the country, and in the parliament makes almost impossible to take decisions because they are opposing to everything. it's going to be a very hard time in the way to rule the country those days. And the Republicans, in October 5, 1910, they make a coup and they proclaim the Republic in the country. Our last king was Emmanuel II. He left for Brazil, he left for England, where he lived and died, and Portugal became a republic. But having changed the system from monarchy into republic didn't change the problems of the country. Political instability, bankrupt, no money, no loans from abroad, so the country is actually in a very bad situation. Well, that happens in 1926, when finally the country is absolutely bankrupt, no money at all, and no foreign nations would make loans to the country. So the militaries of the generals of the army and of the navy, they decide to put a coup and to take control over the country to finish with all this situation caused by the politicians of the time. And so they make a coup and they give the Department of Economy on Finances, Economics and Finances to a man called Antonio de Oliveira Salazar. Salazar became Minister of the Economy, but 6 months later he comes to the generals and says, "Gentlemen, it's impossible to rule this country. There is no way to organize the economy of the country. Everybody does whatever they want. No one respects anything, and I can't do anything at all." Well, the generals appoint him Prime Minister with full power of decision. And Salazar extinguished immediately all the political parties. All of them become illegal, and only one is authorized, the party of the government. He starts working under a dictatorship, and in about 4 years' time, he had paid the debt of Portugal to other nations, he had restored the credit we had abroad, we had restored the economy, but he was very much afraid that if he would step out of the power, there will be other people to come, take over, and would start it all over again. And so faked elections after faked elections, he kept the power, and Portugal is ruled under a dictatorship. 1969, he falls in an accident, enters a coma, then he goes to the hospital. 1 year later he dies, actually, and he is replaced in the power by Marcelo Caetano. Marcelo Caetano is a man that always opposed Salazar inside the party. They both belonged to the same party. They were opponents, but friends in the private life, but opponents indeed inside the party, having different opinions. Marcelo was much more liberal than Salazar, who was much more radical, and when he picks the power, we all had great hopes that the whole thing was going to change. We were going to finish the dictatorship, we are going to have the beginning of a democracy, great hopes, we're going to finish a colonial war that we had in Africa against the movements of liberation in Angola, Mozambique and Guinea, but that didn't happen. It was a disappointment. And so the officers, the captains this time, of the Army, Navy and Air Force all together, they planned the coup just to put an end into that colonial war, and that happened on April 25th, 1974. There was no shooting at all. That's why that revolution of 74 is called the Revolution of the Carnations, because by the end of the day, when the Prime Minister and the President surrendered, and they were sent for exile in Brazil, where they lived and died. Well, actually, when they surrendered, the people in the streets were so happy that they were putting carnations in the guns of the soldiers. So actually this became known as the Revolution of the Carnations. And this marks the beginning of 2 years of transition to the democracy. Those 2 years of transition, 74, 76 indeed, were under the control of the officers of the Army, the Navy and the Air Force, high-rank officers. As I've explained to you in that stud farm, the only party that was in the underground organized at the time was the Communist Party. They immediately take over all the main departments of the government, so even the Prime Minister appointed at the time for this period of 2 years, it's from the Communist Party. So a lot of things are gonna be changed in the country, and in 1975, November, there is a counter coup. organized by the other officers of the Army, the Navy and the Air Force that were not part of the Communist Party. So this counter-coup of 75 is the one that restores the original coup and gives the beginning of the democracy. So 1976, there are free elections for the first time in the past 50 years, and those free elections give a new government, a new constitution as well. So Portugal nowadays is in the Third Republic. By the way, let me show you all these solar panels here on the left. It's a very common way together with the mills, with the generators, just to get power, clean power in this country. And so Portugal is now in the Third Republic. The First Republic is the one from 1910 to 1926. Then 1926 to 1974 is the Second Republic, the dictatorship, and the Third Republic started then in 1976 with the first free elections in the past 50 years. Well, in very, very, very short, because as you can imagine, the history of a country, which is about 900 years old, in 10 minutes, it's difficult. But actually, in very short, this history of this country, hope it helps you to understand the country. And to those who didn't fall asleep, thank you for surviving. Thank you. Can be sunny all over, and it's gonna run cats and dogs over here. Cats, dogs, elephants, wherever, actually sometimes fall over here. And that led precisely to the primitive tribes to call to the place where we are heading now the Promontorium Sacrum, the holy promontory. Why? Because the winds blowing all the time, very, very strong. The permanent electric storms, thunderstorms all the time, with the flashing and the lights and all that. People, they could not explain all these things. So the primitive tribes, they knew nothing about the world, about Earth, about wherever it was causing all these things. And so for them, this could only be explained as these were gods. That was the place for the gods to live. That was a holy place because the gods were living there. And they call it the Holy Promontorium, precisely. And so the Romans kept the name of the primitives in Latin, Sacrum Promontorium, in Latin, basically. And that gives the name Sacres, Sacrum Sacres, present name of this part of this region of the country. Indeed, there it's a region that is much less developed than the rest of the Algarve because of the weather conditions. People, they won't buy homes here. Actually, summer houses and all that in a region that is always under storms and a lot of thunderstorms in winter time as well. Look at the trees on the right. These are umbrella pine trees, very young ones, which are growing up. Orange trees on the right. We can find, I was trying to find, there on the right, almond trees. Actually, it's difficult to point to you, as they are all mixed up, one after another. In this case here, we don't have these plantations. But one of the most common trees here in Algarve is the almond tree. We produce tons and tons of almonds. Some of you tried yesterday, precise, that almond liqueur. But that one is made with bitter almonds, not sweet almonds. And actually, you know what's funny? Our pastry, it's based in almonds. We make liqueur with almonds. We cook with almonds, as we had the soup yesterday on the stud farm with toasted almonds inside as well. We use very much the almonds everywhere. And you know what happens when I go to buy them from the market? They always come from California. I don't know where ours go, but in a global trade world, probably they are, I don't know where, some other place, some other country. Here, you know what? That rooster in this country is a good luck charm. As a matter of fact, there is a legend that associates the rooster with El Camino. You know what I'm talking about? When I say El Camino? El Camino means the way of a pilgrimage to Santiago de Compostela, to St. James of Compostela. And as a matter of fact, that way of pilgrimage has been used since basically almost 1,500 years by pilgrims on the way to Santiago de Compostela in the northern part of Spain, in the region of Galicia. And there are several ways of pilgrimage, 7 of them. One of them comes across Portugal. And the legend says, because this is a legend, says that many centuries ago there was a man, a pilgrim, on his way to Santiago, that in a town called Barcelos had no more money. And so he had to find a job to get money. And he found a job working in the house of a noble and rich family. So after a few weeks of working in that house, the owner of the house organize a reception for some friends, and so they lay down on the table all the best they had. Silverware, crystal, the best porcelain, china, porcelain on the tables, everything indeed, and it was a success, that reception. And when the guests leave, they start cleaning everything, and they realize that some of the silverware is missing. Well, who might have been? Not the guests for sure. The other waiters in the house had been there for years and years, so the only one who might have done it is the new one. That man, the pilgrim, who had found a job right there. So the man goes to jail, and then the judge sentenced the man to be hanged by the neck as an example for all the potential thieves of the region. Well, next day in the morning, the guards take the man out of the cell, and on the way to the main square to be hanged, the man asks as his last wish to talk with the judge. The judge is home, entertaining some friends. They are sitting at a table, it's about lunchtime, and the table is laid, and right in the middle there is a huge big roasted rooster ready to be eaten. Still the smoke coming out of the rooster. Well, they take the man to the judge, and the judge asks him, "What can I do for you? Yesterday you were unable to prove your innocence. What can I do now?" Well, the man says, actually yesterday I couldn't prove I was not guilty, but today, with the help of Virgin Mary and Saint James, I will prove that I'm innocent. And let me tell you that the rooster that you have on the table in front of you, roasted and ready to be eaten, when you put the rope around my neck to hang me, that rooster is going to stand up and crow for 3 times. Everybody had a big laugh, and the man was taken to the square to be hanged by the neck. Well, a few minutes later, the rooster stands up and crows for 3 times. Everybody, astonishing, rush into the square, and they realize that even the guards were unable to put the rope around the man's neck. The rope refused to hang the man. So of course that the man was sent in freedom with all the excuses, once he had perfectly proved he was innocent, and since then on the rooster became a good luck charm. Imagine how lucky you have to be to make a roasted rooster stand up and crow for 3 times. Not for saving the man's life, only for that fact. Now, interesting and very important for the record. If you're planning to buy one, let me tell you that it doesn't work with the lottery numbers. I've already tried several times, never worked. And they say as well, if you really want to be very, very lucky, you have to buy a very, very big rooster. Tall, big, strong indeed. Even though I believe it doesn't work. But it's quite picturesque, we see the roosters in every little thing. We see the roosters in metal, in cork, in plastic, on aprons, made of wood, different kinds of material indeed, with all these bright colors. Quite interesting. In front of us we start seeing already the town of Sagres, and it's a little town, about 1,000 inhabitants. But this was one of the bases of Henry the Navigator in the time of our sea adventure. As a matter of fact, here there is a huge big fort which is empty inside. There is nothing inside, only the walls outside, where in the past Henry the Navigator built a nautical school where he trained and prepared most of the sailors who navigated in those days, where he had a chapel as well, where he used to go and pray for the success of those expeditions. And here in this promontorium, either St. Vincent Cape, Sagres, Lagos used to live, come and go, waiting for the return of these expeditions. So this is a place where we have to talk about this man, about Henry the Navigator. In a certain way, actually, he was important not only for this phase of our history, but because he was Duke of Viseu, because he was one of the sons of the King of John I, indeed. Therefore, he is quite an important character, an important personage in our history. We are going now to St. Vincent Cape, which is the most isolated point, indeed, and the southwesternmost point of this country. The name of the place where we are heading, St. Vincent Cape, reminds us this martyr, whose body was brought from North Africa in 1133, so the 12th century, straight to this cape, on a Portuguese ship. So it stays right here in the so-called, in the past, Temple of the Crows. There were crows and there was a temple dedicated to them. And so from here, the dead body of St. Vincent, a martyr of North Africa, is taken to Lisbon, where he's going to be buried in the Cathedral of Lisbon. And later on, with the earthquake of 1755, we lost track of the body of that saint. Actually, we lost the place where the saint had been born. But actually, that gives a name to the cape, where nowadays we have the lighthouse that dates back from the 19th century. Nowadays, fully automated, the lighthouse, where many times the ships had to wait for the storms to go. So this is a place with frequent storms, the water, and so ships making this coast often used to stop right here, waiting for the storms to go. And we are now arriving at St. Vincent Cape. You're gonna have some time here to take your photos, but pay attention please to my words. These are very high and dangerous cliffs. Many people has died falling off these cliffs. To have a good photo, you don't have to go to the edge of the cliff. Easy to slide, stones, sand, easy to fall down, and actually we are 48 people. I want to keep the 48 till the very end, right? So please stay away from the edge of the cliffs. Take your photos and come back to the coach. Why is that? The sun would set every day, would rise next day. The moon would rise every night, would set every morning. So actually for them, these were gods, of course, because they could not explain the world in they were living. And therefore, actually, everything for them must be a holy thing, a holy place. You're not going to make... There's a nice little beach down here on the right. Very little, indeed. These kind of trees we see here on the right with these yellow flowers, these are no trees. This is the stick that grows out of the century plant. It's a cactus, see here in front. And on the right, you see? These are these big cactus right here, known as century plants. The fortress of Sagres on the right. I don't know, all sorts of boats. Little fishing boats to the right, in front, then other boats, motor boats, and that sailing boats to the left. But That's the bay here that is sheltered.
I'll wait over there. You be careful.
C'est un pont de Piedade, c'est le pont de la Pitié. Ça Ça ici Le bas là en bas.
Well, you have to bring some heaters to turn them on. Look at the donkeys on the right. You know, these, yes, some of them they are. Depends on the variety, but these animals use ideas to round up the Cape of the Storms, later on the Cape of Good Hope, actually in 1400.
Lagos.
So actually, all these we talk about when we came to this to this town, the town of Lagos. Julian's was born here, and in a few moments, in front of us, on the right, an old fort, the fort of Ponta da Bandeira. It was one of the forts to protect the entrance of the port and to protect the city as well from the sea rovers, from the pirates that often used to attack to rob the cities. And coming on the left hand side, right now, the old city walls and the old city inside these walls. After the next tree, in the shade of the tree, the statue of Gil Yandes, that Portuguese sailor that rounded Cape Bujador. Summertime is time for music festivals all over the country. Everywhere we go, there is a stage, there are assembling stages, they're gonna have music a little bit all over. That's what is coming here. But if you look to the left in a few moments, you're going to see the statue there, the bronze. You see the flag over there, the boot right over there. Follow that direction and you see the statue of Henry the Navigator again. Can you see him right there? Where all dead people is. Right over there. See that? Oh, it's right there on the left. You're going to see in a few moments. Eventually in a few moments you're going to see it looking to the left. It's a bronze. Passing now, can you see it on the left? Right over there. the man with the hat, that funny hat. Here on the right, all these boats, they are going for those grottos, for that rock formation, for those caves. It's part of the ocean. It's a bay. It's a bay, the entrance to the marina. You're going to see soon on the right the marina. There is a fishing marina coming soon on the right. Then there is a sport marina for the motorboats, for the yachts. The fishing marina, it's coming on the right. It's a little space, indeed. The fishing port.
Hani arımız var, böyle sonradan hepsini dolaylı.
So this building coming on the left hand side, which is the local market, very similar to the one you saw in Setúbal, the market of Livramento. This one on the top is a little restaurant. All these street vendors on the right, with this beautiful Portuguese handicraft made in China.
Bir tane yağlı koymak ya.
Here comes the sport marina with all these motorboats, sailboats, motor-sailor, yachts, and the apartments around, of course. With all those many shops and restaurants around as well in the marina. This is called the Marina of Lagos. Look at the chimney in front of us with the stork on the top. They're on the right now. Actually, these chimneys, they were part of old brickeries. When they put down these brickeries, they always keep the chimneys as what they call industrial archaeology. And so they keep it. And often they build apartment buildings, they build wherever it is, and the chimneys are integrated in the project of development. They don't pull them down, they keep them. An old water mill to grind the grain, definitely, but we do water rather than the wind. And the town of Portygal on your right hand side. Here is the back, so sometimes not exact, but the front it's really beautiful. Some of them are really pieces of art.
Mais pra trás, tem que ser mais pra trás, pera, eu não tenho mais pra trás. Pera, ih, pô, você tá mais chato, meu.
These are frames for the storage. They put frames in the place where they want them to be, to move them away from other places where they don't want them to be. Afterwards, even in the trees and in the posts of electricity, all those things, the towers, many times they don't cut them, but once they cannot kill the animal or destroy the nest, they make a place like that, a kind of a frame, iron, like that. So the stork starts building the nest there and moves from the one to the other. That's what they do. That's how they transfer that. No, they do. When she moves, they put down the net. Absolutely, yes, right. Not only here.
3 times.
Coimbra and other places, the bell are going to ring. I know that.
In the Roman times, the Roman soldiers of the Roman legions, half of the salary was paid in salt, the other half was paid in cash. And so salt was really something very, very important. And the salt beds in this region have been something since the Roman times. So the salt beds and the salt extraction, salt production has been here for more than 2,000 years. And therefore we are going to come and see precisely what's nowadays production of salt, sea salt of course, the salt that really it's the very best salt, and the very best quality of the sea salt is what they call the flower of the salt, and that's what we are going to see. So now once Arnaldo stop the bus, follow me, turn on your audio radios please.